Here are some motivational stories that will inspire you to pursue your aspirations, be compassionate towards others, and persevere through any challenges. These tales will empower you to alter your mindset and enhance your life. 1. Laziness won't get you anywhere. In ancient times, a king had his men place a boulder on a roadway. He then hid in the bushes, and watched to see if anyone would move the boulder out of the way. Some of the king's wealthiest merchants and courtiers passed by and simply walked around it. Many people blamed the king for not keeping the roads clear, but none of them did anything about getting the stone removed. One day, a peasant came along carrying vegetables. Upon approaching the boulder, the peasant laid down his burden and tried to push the stone out of the way. After much pushing and straining, he finally managed. After the peasant went back to pick up his vegetables, he noticed a purse lying in the road where the boulder had been. The purse contained many gold coins, and note from the king explained that the gold was for the person who removed the boulder from the road. 2. Don't say something you regret out of anger. There once was a little boy who had a very bad temper. His father decided to hand him a bag of nails and said that every time the boy lost his temper, he had to hammer a nail into the fence. On the first day, the boy hammered 37 nails into that fence. The boy gradually began to control his temper over the next few weeks, and the number of nails he was hammering into the fence slowly decreased. He discovered it was easier to control his temper than to hammer those nails into the fence. Finally, the day came when the boy didn't lose his temper at all. He told his father the news, and the father suggested that the boy should now pull out a nail every day he kept his temper under control. The days passed and the young boy was finally able to tell his father that all the nails were gone. The father took his son by the hand and led him to the fence. "You have done well, my son, but look at the holes in the fence. The fence will never be the same. When you say things in anger, they leave a scar just like this one. You can put a knife in a man and draw it out. It won't matter how many times you say I'm sorry, the wound is still there." 3. Stop wasting your time complaining. People visit a wise man complaining about the same problems over and over again. One day, he decided to tell them a joke and they all roared with laughter. After a few minutes, he told them the same joke and only a few of them smiled. Then he told the same joke for a third time, but no one laughed or smiled anymore. The wise man smiled and said, "You can't laugh at the same joke over and over. So why are you always crying about the same problem?" 4. Damaged souls still have worth. A shop owner placed a sign above his door that said, "Puppies for sale." Signs like this always have a way of attracting young children, and to no surprise, a boy saw the sign and approached the owner. "How much are you going to sell the puppies for?" he asked. The store owner replied, "Anywhere from $30 to $50. The little boy pulled out some change from his pocket. "I have $2.37, he said. "Can I please look at them?" The shop owner smiled and whistled. Out of the kennel came Lady, who ran down the aisle of his shop followed by 5 tiny balls of fur. One puppy was lagging considerably behind. Immediately the little boy singled out the lagging, limping puppy and said, "What's wrong with that little dog?" The shop owner explained that the veterinarian had examined the little puppy and had discovered it didn't have a hip socket. It would always limp. It would always be lame. The little boy became excited. "That is the puppy that I want to buy." The shop owner said, "No, you don't want to buy that little dog. If you really want him, I'll just give him to you." The little boy got quite upset. He looked straight into the store owner's eyes, pointing his finger, and said, "I don't want you to give him to me. That little dog is worth every bit as much as all the other dogs and I'll pay full price. In fact, I'll give you $2.37 now, and 50 cents a month until I have him paid for." The shop owner countered, "You really don't want to buy this little dog. He is never going to be able to run and jump and play with you like the other puppies." To his surprise, the little boy reached down and rolled up his pant leg to reveal a badly twisted, crippled left leg supported by a big metal brace. He looked up at the shop owner and softly replied, "Well, I don't run so well myself, and the little puppy will need someone who understands." 5. Never let one failure from the past hold you back in the future. As a man was passing the elephants, he suddenly stopped, confused by the fact that these huge creatures were being held by only a small rope tied to their front leg. No chains, no cages. It was obvious that the elephants could, at any time, break away from their bonds, but for some reason, they did not. He saw a trainer nearby and asked why these animals just stood there and made no attempt to get away. Well, trainer said, when they are very young and much smaller we use the same size rope to tie them and, at that age, it's enough to hold them. As they grow up, they are conditioned to believe they cannot break away. They believe the rope can still hold them, so they never try to break free. The man was amazed. These animals could at any time break free from their bonds, but because they believed they couldn't, they were stuck right where they were. 6. Struggling will make you stronger. Once upon a time, a man found a butterfly that was starting to hatch from its cocoon. He sat down and watched the butterfly for hours as it struggled to force itself through a tiny hole. Then, it suddenly stopped making progress and looked like it was stuck. Therefore, the man decided to help the butterfly out. He took a pair of scissors and cut off the remaining bit of the cocoon. The butterfly then emerged easily, although it had a swollen body and small, shriveled wings. The man thought nothing of it, and he sat there waiting for the wings to enlarge to support the butterfly. However, that never happened. The butterfly spent the rest of its life unable to fly, crawling around with small wings and a swollen body. Despite the man's kind heart, he didn't understand that the restricting cocoon and the struggle needed by the butterfly to get itself through the small hole were God's way of forcing fluid from the body of the butterfly into its wings to prepare itself for flying once it was free. 7. Your reaction matters more than what happens to you. Once upon a time a daughter complained to her father that her life was miserable and that she didn't know how she was going to make it. She was tired of fighting and struggling all the time. It seemed just as one problem was solved, another one soon followed. Her father, a chef, took her to the kitchen. He filled 3 pots with water and placed each on a high fire. Once the 3 pots began to boil, he placed potatoes in 1 pot, eggs in the 2nd pot, and ground coffee beans in the 3rd pot. He then let them sit and boil, without saying a word to his daughter. The daughter moaned and impatiently waited, wondering what he was doing. After 20 minutes he turned off the burners. He took the potatoes out of the pot and placed them in a bowl. He pulled the boiled eggs out and placed them in a bowl. He then ladled the coffee out and placed it in a cup. Turning to her he asked, "Daughter, what do you see?" "Potatoes, eggs, and coffee," she hastily replied. "Look closer," he said, and touched the potatoes. She did and noted that they were soft. He then asked her to take an egg and break it. After pulling off the shell, she observed the hard-boiled egg. Finally, he asked her to sip the coffee. Its rich aroma brought a smile to her face. "Father, what does this mean?" she asked. He then explained that the potatoes, the eggs and coffee beans had each faced the same adversity, the boiling water. However, each one reacted differently. The potato went in strong, hard, and unrelenting, but in boiling water, it became soft and weak. The egg was fragile, with the thin outer shell protecting its liquid interior until it was put in the boiling water. Then the inside of the egg became hard. However, the ground coffee beans were unique. After they were exposed to the boiling water, they changed the water and created something new. "Which are you?" he asked his daughter. "When adversity knocks on your door, how do you respond? Are you a potato, an egg, or a coffee bean?" 8. Don't insult the things you wish you could have. One afternoon, a fox was walking through the forest and spotted a bunch of grapes hanging from a lofty branch. "Just the thing to quench my thirst," he thought. Taking a couple of steps back, the fox jumped and just missed the hanging grapes. The fox tried again but still failed to reach them. Finally, giving up, the fox turned his nose up and said, "They're probably sour anyway," and walked away. 9. Be kind to others even if it hurts you. In the days when an ice cream sundae cost much less, a 10-year-old boy entered a hotel coffee shop and sat at a table. A waitress put a glass of water in front of him. "How much is an ice cream sundae?" "50 cents, replied the waitress. The little boy pulled his hand out of his pocket and studied a number of coins in it. "How much is a dish of plain ice cream?" he inquired. Some people were now waiting for a table and the waitress was a bit impatient. 35 cents, she said brusquely. The little boy again counted the coins. "I'll have the plain ice cream," he said. The waitress brought the ice cream, put the bill on the table and walked away. The boy finished the ice cream, paid the cashier and departed. When the waitress came back, she began wiping down the table and then swallowed hard at what she saw. There, placed neatly beside the empty dish, were 15 cents, her tip. 10. Ignore the haters. A group of frogs were traveling through the forest when 2 of them fell into a deep pit. When the other frogs saw how deep the pit was, they told the two frogs that there was no hope left for them. However, the two frogs ignored their comrades and proceeded to try to jump out of the pit. However, despite their efforts, the group of frogs at the top of the pit were still saying that they should just give up as they'd never make it out. Eventually, one of the frogs took heed of what the others were saying and he gave up, jumping even deeper to his death. The other frog continued to jump as hard as he could. Once again, the group of frogs yelled at him to stop the pain and to just die. He ignored them, and jumped even harder and finally made it out. When he got out, the other frogs said, "Did you not hear us?" The frog explained to them that he was deaf, and that he thought they were encouraging him the entire time. 11. Even though you're damaged, you still have value. A popular speaker started off a seminar by holding up a $20 bill. A crowd of 200 had gathered to hear him speak. He asked, "Who would like this $20 bill?" 200 hands went up. He said, "I am going to give this $20 to one of you, but first, let me do this." He crumpled the bill up. He then asked, "Who still wants it?" All 200 hands were still raised. "Well," he replied, "what if I do this?" Then he dropped the bill on the ground and stomped on it with his shoes. He picked it up, and showed it to the crowd. The bill was all crumpled and dirty. Now who still wants it? All the hands still went up. My friends, I have just showed you a very important lesson. No matter what I did to the money, you still wanted it because it did not decrease in value. It was still worth $20. Many times in our lives, life crumples us and grinds us into the dirt. We make bad decisions or deal with poor circumstances. We feel worthless. But no matter what has happened or what will happen, you will never lose your value. You are special, don't ever forget it. 12. Don't judge others before you know them. A 24-year-old boy seeing out from the train's window shouted, "Dad, look, the trees are going behind." Dad smiled, and a young couple sitting nearby looked at the 24-year-old's childish behavior with pity. Suddenly he again exclaimed, "Dad, look, the clouds are running with us." The couple couldn't resist and said to the old man, "Why don't you take your son to a good doctor?" The old man smiled and said, "I did, and we are just coming from the hospital. My son was blind from birth, he just got his eyes today." Every single person on the planet has a story. Don't judge people before you truly know them. The truth might surprise you. 13. Think outside of the box. In a small Italian town, hundreds of years ago, a small business owner owed a large sum of money to a loan shark. The loan shark was a very old, unattractive-looking guy that just so happened to fancy the business owner's daughter. He decided to offer the businessman a deal that would completely wipe out the debt he owed him. However, the catch was that we would only wipe out the debt if he could marry the businessman's daughter. Needless to say, this proposal was met with a look of disgust. The loan shark said that he would place 2 pebbles into a bag, one white and one black. The daughter would then have to reach into the bag and pick out a pebble. If it was black, the debt would be wiped, but the loan shark would then marry her. If it was white, the debt would also be wiped, but the daughter wouldn't have to marry the loan shark. Standing on a pebble-strewn path in the businessman's garden, the loan shark bent over and picked up 2 pebbles. Whilst he was picking them up, the daughter noticed that he'd picked up 2 black pebbles and placed them both into the bag. He then asked the daughter to reach into the bag and pick one. The daughter naturally had 3 choices as to what she could have done. 1. Refuse to pick a pebble from the bag. 2. Take both pebbles out of the bag and expose the loan shark for cheating. 3. Pick a pebble from the bag fully well knowing it was black and sacrifice herself for her father's freedom. She drew out a pebble from the bag, and before looking at it, accidentally dropped it into the midst of the other pebbles. She said to the loan shark, "Oh, how clumsy of me. Never mind, if you look into the bag for the one that is left, you will be able to tell which pebble I picked." The pebble left in the bag is obviously black, and seeing as the loan shark didn't want to be exposed, he had to play along as if the pebble the daughter dropped was white, and clear her father's debt. 14. Enjoy the moment. After spending nearly every waking minute with Angel for 8 straight days, I knew that I had to tell her just one thing. So late at night, just before she fell asleep, I whispered it in her ear. She smiled, the kind of smile that makes me smile back, and she said, "When I'm 75 and I think about my life and what it was like to be young, I hope that I can remember this very moment." A few seconds later she closed her eyes and fell asleep. The room was peaceful, almost silent. All I could hear was the soft purr of her breathing. I stayed awake thinking about the time we'd spent together and all the choices in our lives that made this moment possible. And at some point, I realized that it didn't matter what we'd done or where we'd gone. Nor did the future hold any significance. All that mattered was the serenity of the moment. Just being with her and breathing with her. 15. Stop chasing happiness. An old man lived in a village. The whole village was tired of him. He was always gloomy, he constantly complained and was always in a bad mood. The longer he lived, the viler he became and more poisonous were his words. People did their best to avoid him because his misfortune was contagious. He created the feeling of unhappiness in others. But one day, when he turned 80, an incredible thing happened. Instantly everyone started hearing the rumor, the old man is happy today, he doesn't complain about anything, smiles, and even his face is freshened up. The whole village gathered around the man and asked him, what happened to you? The old man replied, nothing special. 80 years I've been chasing happiness and it was useless. And then I decided to live without happiness and just enjoy life. That's why I'm happy now. 16. Learn from your problems. A man's favorite donkey falls into a deep precipice. He can't pull it out no matter how hard he tries. He therefore decides to bury it alive. Soil is poured onto the donkey from above. The donkey feels the load, shakes it off, and steps on it. More soil is poured. It shakes it off and steps up. The more the load was poured, the higher it rose. By noon, the donkey was grazing in green pastures. 17. Don't assume you are going to fail. During a research experiment, a marine biologist placed a shark into a large holding tank and then released several small bait fish into the tank. As you would expect, the shark quickly swam around the tank, attacked and ate the smaller fish. The marine biologist then inserted a strong piece of clear fiberglass into the tank, creating two separate partitions. She then put the shark on one side of the fiberglass and a new set of bait fish on the other. Again, the shark quickly attacked. This time, however, the shark slammed into the fiberglass divider and bounced off. Undeterred, the shark kept repeating this behavior every few minutes to no avail. Meanwhile, the bait fish swam around unharmed in the second partition. Eventually, about an hour into the experiment, the shark gave up. This experiment was repeated several dozen times over the next few weeks. Each time, the shark got less aggressive and made fewer attempts to attack the bait fish, until eventually the shark got tired of hitting the fiberglass divider and simply stopped attacking altogether. The marine biologist then removed the fiberglass divider, but the shark didn't attack. The shark was trained to believe a barrier existed between it and the bait fish, so the bait fish swam wherever they wished, free from harm. 18. You get what you give. Once, there was a farmer who regularly sold butter to a baker. One day, the baker decided to weigh the butter to see if he was getting the exact amount that he asked for. He found out that he wasn't, so he took the farmer to court. The judge asked the farmer if he uses any measure to weigh the butter. The farmer replied, "Your Honor, I'm primitive. I don't have a proper measure, but I do have a scale." The judge replied, "Then how do you weigh the butter?" The farmer replied, "Your Honor, long before the baker started buying butter from me, I have been buying a pound loaf of bread from him. Every day, when the baker brings the bread, I put it on the scale and give him the same weight in butter. If anyone is to be blamed, it's the baker." Moral of the story, in life, you get what you give. Don't try to cheat others. 19. Stop stressing so much. Once upon a time a psychology professor walked around on a stage while teaching stress management principles to an auditorium filled with students. As she raised a glass of water, everyone expected they'd be asked the typical glass half empty or glass half full question. Instead, with a smile on her face, the professor asked, "How heavy is this glass of water I'm holding?" Students shouted out answers ranging from 8 ounces to a couple pounds. She replied, "From my perspective, the absolute weight of this glass doesn't matter. It all depends on how long I hold it. If I hold it for a minute or two, it's fairly light. If I hold it for an hour straight, its weight might make my arm ache a little. If I hold it for a day straight, my arm will likely cramp up and feel completely numb and paralyzed, forcing me to drop the glass to the floor. In each case, the weight of the glass doesn't change, but the longer I hold it, the heavier it feels to me." As the class shook their heads in agreement, she continued, "Your stresses and worries in life are very much like this glass of water. Think about them for a while and nothing happens. Think about them a bit longer and you begin to ache a little. Think about them all day long, and you will feel completely numb and paralyzed, incapable of doing anything else until you drop them. 20. Don't screw over your friends. Vijay and Raju were friends. One day while on holiday, exploring a forest, they saw a bear coming towards them. Naturally, they were both frightened, so Raju, who knew how to climb trees, climbed one quickly. He didn't spare a thought for his friend who had no idea how to climb. Vijay thought for a moment. He had heard that animals don't attack dead bodies, so he fell to the ground and held his breath. The bear sniffed him, thought he was dead, and went on its way. Raju, after he had climbed down from the tree, asked Vijay, "What did the bear whisper in your ears?" Vijay replied, "The bear asked me to keep away from friends like you." 21. Your good deeds could change the world. Every Sunday morning I take a light jog around a park near my home. There's a lake located in one corner of the park. Each time I jog by this lake, I see the same elderly woman sitting at the water's edge with a small metal cage sitting beside her. This past Sunday my curiosity got the best of me, so I stopped jogging and walked over to her. As I got closer, I realized that the metal cage was in fact a small trap. There were 3 turtles, unharmed, slowly walking around the base of the trap. She had a 4th turtle in her lap that she was carefully scrubbing with a spongy brush. "Hello," I said. "I see you here every Sunday morning. If you don't mind my nosiness, I'd love to know what you're doing with these turtles." She smiled. "I'm cleaning off their shells," she replied. Anything on a turtle's shell, like algae or scum, reduces the turtle's ability to absorb heat and impedes its ability to swim. It can also corrode and weaken the shell over time. "Wow! That's really nice of you," I exclaimed. She went on, "I spend a couple of hours each Sunday morning, relaxing by this lake and helping these little guys out. It's my own strange way of making a difference." "But don't most freshwater turtles live their whole lives with algae and scum hanging from their shells?" I asked. "Yep, sadly, they do," she replied. I scratched my head. "Well then, don't you think your time could be better spent? I mean, I think your efforts are kind and all, but there are freshwater turtles living in lakes all around the world. And 99% of these turtles don't have kind people like you to help them clean off their shells. So, no offense, but how exactly are your localized efforts here truly making a difference?" The woman giggled aloud. She then looked down at the turtle in her lap, scrubbed off the last piece of algae from its shell, and said, "Sweetie, if this little guy could talk, he'd tell you I just made all the difference in the world." 22. Don't let your circumstances change you. There once was a blind woman who hated herself purely because she could not see. The only person she loved was her boyfriend, as he was always there for her. She said that if she could only see the world, then she would marry him. One day, someone donated a pair of eyes to her. Now she could see everything, including her boyfriend. Her loving boyfriend asked her, "Now that you can see the world, will you marry me?" The woman was shocked when she saw that her boyfriend was blind too, and refused to marry him. Her boyfriend walked away in tears, and wrote a short note to her saying, "Just take care of my eyes, dear." 23. You are not going to get anything handed to you. A man walked to the top of a hill to talk to God. The man asked, "God, what's a million years to you?" And God said, "A minute." Then the man asked, "Well, what's $1 million to you?" And God said, "A penny." Then the man asked, "God, can I have a penny?" And God said, "Sure, in a minute." 24. Do not get too greedy. It was an incredibly hot day and a lion was feeling very hungry. He crawled out of his den and searched here and there, but he could only find a small hare. He caught the hare, but with some hesitation as he knew the hare wouldn't fill him up. As the lion was about to kill the hare, he spotted a deer coming his way and thought, "Instead of eating this small hare, let me eat that big deer." So he let the hare go and went after the deer, but it vanished in the forest. The lion now had nothing to eat as the hare was also long gone. 25. Your talent only matters if you are somewhere it can be used. A mother and a baby camel were lying around under a tree. Then the baby camel asked, "Why do camels have humps?" The mother camel considered this and said, "We are desert animals, so we have the humps to store water so we can survive with very little water." The baby camel thought for a moment then said, "Okay, why are our legs long and our feet rounded?" The mama replied, "They are meant for walking in the desert." The baby paused. After a beat, the camel asked, "Why are our eyelashes long?" "Sometimes they get in my way." The mama responded, "Those long thick eyelashes protect your eyes from the desert sand when it blows in the wind." The baby thought and thought. Then he said, I see. So the hump is to store water when we are in the desert, the legs are for walking through the desert, and these eyelashes protect my eyes from the desert. Then why in the zoo? 26. Always tell the truth. One night 4 college kids stayed out late, partying and having a good time. They paid no mind to the test they had scheduled for the next day and didn't study. In the morning, they hatched a plan to get out of taking their test. They covered themselves with grease and dirt and went to the dean's office. Once there, they said they had been to a wedding the previous night, and on the way back they got a flat tire and had to push the car back to campus. The dean listened to their tale of woe and thought. He offered them a retest 3 days later. They thanked him and accepted his offer that time. When the test day arrived, they went to the dean. The dean put them all in separate rooms for the test. They were fine with this since they had all studied hard. Then they saw the test. It had 2 questions. 1. Your name underscore 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 1 points. 2. Which tire burst? Underscore 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 99 points. 27. Love matters more than material items. Some time ago, a man punished his young daughter for wasting a roll of gold wrapping paper. Money was tight and he became angry when the child tried to decorate a box to put under the Christmas tree. Nevertheless, the girl brought the gift to her father on Christmas Day and said, "This is for you, Daddy." The man became embarrassed by his overreaction a few days before, but his rage continued when he saw that the box was empty. He yelled at her, "Don't you know, when you give someone a gift, there's supposed to be something inside?" The little girl looked up at her dad with tears in her eyes and cried, "Oh, Daddy, it's not empty at all. I blew kisses into the box. They're all for you, Daddy." The father was devastated. He put his arms around his daughter, and begged for her forgiveness. A little while later, the girl died in an accident. Her father kept the gold box by his bed for many years and, whenever he was feeling down, he would take out an imaginary kiss and remember the love of the child who had put it there. 28. Your priorities matter. Imagine you had a bank account that deposited $86,400 each morning. The account carries over no balance from day to day, allows you to keep no cash balance, and every evening cancels whatever part of the amount you had failed to use during the day. What would you do? Draw out every dollar each day. We all have such a bank. Its name is time. Every morning, it credits you with 86,400 seconds. Every night it writes off, as lost, whatever time you have failed to use wisely. It carries over no balance from day to day. It allows no overdraft, so you can't borrow against yourself or use more time than you have. Each day, the account starts fresh. Each night, it destroys an unused time. If you fail to use the day's deposits, it's your loss and you can't appeal to get it back. There is never any borrowing time. You can't take a loan out on your time or against someone else's. The time you have is the time you have, and that is that. Time management is yours to decide how you spend the time, just as with money you decide how you spend the money. It is never the case of us not having enough time to do things, but the case of whether we want to do them and where they fall in our priorities. 29. Never give up on your dreams. Once, there was an older man, who was broke, living in a tiny house and owned a beat-up car. He was living off of $99 Social Security checks. At 65 years of age, he decided things had to change. So he thought about what he had to offer. His friends raved about his chicken recipe. He decided that this was his best shot at making a change. He left Kentucky and traveled to different states to try to sell his recipe. He told restaurant owners that he had a mouth-watering chicken recipe. He offered the recipe to them for free, just asking for a small percentage on the items sold. Sounds like a good deal, right? Unfortunately, not to most of the restaurants. He heard no over 1,000 times. Even after all of those rejections, he didn't give up. He believed his chicken recipe was something special. He got rejected 1,009 times before he heard his first yes. With that one success, Colonel Heartland Sanders changed the way Americans eat chicken. Kentucky Fried Chicken, popularly known as KFC, was born. Remember, never give up and always believe in yourself in spite of rejection. 30. Focus on the good things in life. 2 friends were walking through the desert. At one stage in their journey, they had an argument and one friend slapped the other one in the face. The one who got slapped was hurt, but without saying anything he wrote in the sand, "Today my best friend slapped me in the face." They kept on walking until they found an oasis, where they decided to have a wash. The one who had been slapped got stuck in a mire and started drowning, but his friend saved him. After he had recovered from his shock, he wrote on a stone, "Today my best friend saved my life." The friend who slapped and saved his best friend asked him, "After I hurt you, you wrote in the sand and now, you write in stone, why?" The other friend replied, "When someone hurts us we should write it down in sand where winds of forgiveness can erase it away. But, when someone does something good for us, we must engrave it in stone where no wind can ever erase it."